This is chapter number 11, the making of the national movement. From 1870s to 1947, what are the different events? What are the different happenings with the perspective of the national movement, Indian national movement before our freedom? So this is all we are going to see. Already we know that how British conquered the Indian territories and they took over various kingdoms, different bhubhag or land. They introduced certain new laws. There were different administrative institutions they established. How the lives of peasants, the farmers, the kisans, and the tribals, the Adivasis, it changed. And in the 19th century, educational changes, condition of women, what happened or what were the challenges, caste system, social and religious reforms, that is, religiously and socially, how does things change for betterment or worse? And then the first actual sound of freedom was the revolt of 1857 and how the craft of India declined and industries grown. So these are certain pictures showing British rule in India, the first one. And this second one, we are going to talk about Indian National Congress a lot. And this Congress, these are the people basic building block of our nation. And they started with the movement and then they gave us the freedom. And after 75 years, they have made us this country where we are. So that is how we are going to discuss them. The history is all about what we have to learn about past, event, people, and what happened, good or bad. So in order to start with the basic, this is a picture, and this is police tear gas. You see, these are demonstrators of Quit India movement, Angrezo Bharat Chodo, and they are doing movement for it and getting police tear gas in return. Now tell me one thing. Who are the people of that country? Any country. If you take India, what do you say if you are a person or if you are a citizen, if you are considered as a people of India? Then you are an Indian because you have the control of the resources. You have the access to everything of this land. The person who was or who took birth here, any class, any color, any caste, any creed, any language, any gender, doesn't matter. Every person of this country has all the resources and system access should have. A country has different resources. A country gives various things to the people. And in return, people give back the country many things. The resources and all the systems in the country are meant for that country people, that is, in our case, Indians. Right? The problem is that if someone else, the time I'm talking about, Britishers, now they were controlling the resources. They had everything under their control. They were ruling us. The resources which are non-renewable and renewable. Okay, non-renewable, renewable is okay, like water, air. But non-renewable, like the minerals, like the crude oil, like the wildlife resources, fisheries, the water resources, So Indians cannot control it. Rather than controlling, let me tell you, Indians cannot access it. So, how can we call Indian? We are Indian because we need resources, but the British are controlling it. So this kind of consciousness, this kind of thought, this kind of understanding, when it came, then people started forming political association that we are Indians and we need to rule this country or we need the resources of this country. And this started in 1850. The political association were formed, the association which actually were wanting something, asking for something from the satta, from the power. And this 1870 to 1880s is a very important duration. If you remember, 1857, it was the revolt, first revolt, withdrawal. And that was the first landmark of our freedom, our struggle against freedom from the Britishers. And the people who formed this political association between 1870s and 1880s were mainly the lawyers, that is, they were English educated professionals. They were English educated people. So they were mainly lawyers, So you'll say, they are English educated. How can they think about Indians? See, if somebody is talking in Tamil, the other one is also talking in Tamil. It's okay, conversation can happen. What about one is knowing Hindi, other is knowing Tamil? They cannot talk. But when these people knew English, they had the understanding of India, they had the understanding of Britishers. Now they can talk. Now they can ask for the rights, for the freedom, for the resources, for being Indian. That we are Indians, we want to be Indian. We don't want anybody else's interference. So there were various political associations being formed, like the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Indian Association, the Madras Mahajan Sabha, the Bombay Presidency Association, and finally, the most important is Indian National Congress, INC. We are going to refer it as Congress. You just see the name, some of the names. This Indian National Congress, it was the main key political association for our freedom. And I need to show you that these were not the only ones. These are all the list of the political and nationalists. Nationalists means, say, Rashtrwadi. Okay? Rajnaitik and Rashtrwadi. So it all started West Bengal, or Bengal you can say, not at that time it was not West Bengal. Bengal. And then Indian National Congress, you see A.O. Hume. I'm going to show his picture just now. And it started, or it initiated in Bengal, the Bombay. Indian National Congress, Bombay. We have Indian National Conference, we have Indian Association. There are so many. Okay? So all these political associations in different years, they were being formed because now people have understanding, Chetana, that we need our freedom. Just take an example of Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. What does Sarvajanik means? Sarva means all, Jan mean people. For all people, that is, they are talking about Indians. Firstly, these all political associations were formed in their area. That is, one in Bengal, one in Maharashtra, one in, say, Mumbai, or say, Madras. Okay? But the main goal, the key idea, the objective was same, because all these consciousness, these different political organizations, they have a key goal. They are thinking about the country. They are not thinking about their, say, local aspect, a local problem. Though they have local problem, that is why they were being formed. But the final is that they want Britishers to be out of this country. The Indians to get what they deserve. The first and foremost idea of all of these is India and people of India should be sovereign. Sovereign means Samprabhu, sovereign. Sovereign, that is a country or an association or any entity can work without any outside interference. That is, Indians, by Indian, for Indian, with Indian, any kind of proposition you can use. That is no interference. For example, in our case, Britishers, we don't need any external, alien, foreign interference. That is sovereign. That was the main key idea of everyone, and that is how nationalism started. Nationalism is love for people, love for the country. That is not killing people, not thinking bad of other community or other caste. That is, if you're a taxi driver and you are taking one person to the other destination, you are a nationalist. Okay? If some trees are cutting and you know that this is against the law, that is, taking stand against it is nationalism. You're a computer science engineer making a program that will facilitate the Indians is nationalism. Everything which you do for this country wholeheartedly, thinking that you are doing it, what you have learned in a proper way is nationalism. Right? So Indian people should be empowered to take decisions regarding their internal affairs, internal matters. This is sovereignty. All this dissatisfaction is not created one day. As I said, 1870s and 1880s, why these dissatisfaction, asantosh, why it was so prominent, why it intensified and exponentially grown. First thing, this is step by step I'm telling. First one, Arms Act, 1878. The Arms Act was passed in 1878. Now what this act was saying? This act was saying, just take an example of a Sikh. Now they have 5 Ks, KH, Kripan, like this. So Kripan is an arm, a kind of arm. Now this is in their religion. People used to keep the, say, talwars. They used to keep firearms. They used to keep banduk, pistol, revolver. To safeguard themselves, to safeguard them from the wildlife, all these they used to do. Now the English said, Britishers said, no Indian can possess an arm. Come on, what is this? This is taken aback. And this is not all. In same year, they also passed another act that is called Vernacular Press Act. Vernacular Press Act. Now what was this act saying? See, I'll give an example. Now we both are talking and I say something against you and you started hitting me and you almost killed me. Is this a law? Is this a samajhdari? Is this logic? If I am saying something wrong, how you should react? You should give logic. You should be calm. Okay? Fighting, killing or grabbing or confiscating is not a solution, never being a solution. So, English and British. Now, if Indian or any Indian person is having a press, you are having a newspaper, magazine, article, even you are printing some flyers or pamphlet. Now, if you write anything against me, that is Britishers, the British were saying, you are an Indian. If you are writing anything against Britishers, anything against us, what we are going to do? I am going to do the same thing which this person did to the other person. I am going to confiscate all the assets and we are going to destroy a printing press. Not like that, I'm just saying that basically under law, we are going to confiscate your printing press. Because at that time, having a printing press, that means a huge money. That means a huge money has to be put in so that you can start a printing press. There is only one way. Only through newspaper, through article, people can say something. But now they hit where it hurt the most. Because this was the act against the Indian freedom, Indian press freedom, Indian people freedom. Okay, first 1878 Arms Act, second was the Vernacular Press Act 1878. Now the third one, 1883. Here came the Ilbert Bill. Ilbert Bill. Now this Ilbert Bill was in the favor of Indians. Okay, it was in the favor of Indians. Now there is a British judge, there is an Indian judge. British judge, Indian judge. So in British judge, under British judge, if an Indian say apradhi comes or English apradhi or English person came, British can take the decision for both of them, whether it is Indian or a European, right? But the Indian judge, he can only take decision in the court of law against Indians. Indian judge is not allowed to take decision against the British or European. That is, British are not allowed to, anybody if he is caught in something, some act or some case, he will never be tried under an Indian judge. A British will only be tried under British judge. See? So Ilbert law was saying that now the Indian judge can also try an Indian as well as a British person. That is, any British has done something wrong, the Indian judge can take decision against him. So this was good for Indians. Okay? But the Britishers, the whites, they got very angry and they start protesting. That is, how can an Indian judge can take decision against us? We are Europeans, we are elite class, we are British, we are whites. So the the government, it stepped back because of the white opposition. It withdrew, repealed the Ilbert Bill. Okay. Now the Indian got enraged. They got angry. So they said, Britishers, you have done something for us, and now you are taking it back. Why is this the case? If a British judge can try Indian and a British, why can Indian judge cannot try a British and Indian? They both are lawyers. They both have learned same thing. Okay, why is this? And remember, all the different political association formed mainly were lawyers. So the gussa or the dissatisfaction was more. So now here, as I said, all the political associations mostly formed in a local level. So these three different steps or dissatisfaction or dissatisfying bills, it was required now to have a pan-India, all-India institution, all-India political association. So here was the need. People thought that we need a pan-Indian political association or an association. And just because of this thought, this dissatisfaction, Indian National Congress was established. So 72 delegates from pan-India, all over India, they met at Bombay, present-day Mumbai, in December 1885. Most of them, the lawyers, and most of them elite people, known people, respected people. Right? Let me tell you again. 1885, 72 delegates in Mumbai, they created Indian National Congress. So the initial people, here you see Dada Bhai Nauroji Sahab, Dada Bhai Nauroji. There were other people, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayyabji, W.C. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, S. Subramaniam Iyer. These are just few names. We are talking about 72 delegates. Okay? So they put the first block of Indian National Congress. Most of them you can see by the name from Bombay and Calcutta. One of the important person was Dadabhai Nauroji. Basically, Nauroji was a businessman, but he was also a publicist. That is advertising and Vigyapan, all these things he used to do. So he was settled in London. He was already settled in the UK. Okay, and he was also, for the short time, he was the member of British Parliament as well. So you can see the respect, you can see the eliteness of the people who formed this Indian National Congress. And then he guided the all younger nationalists at that time. The young nationalists means those people who need to understand what nationalism means. Right? This is how the thing started. There is one more person we need to highlight is A.O. Hume, Alan Octavian Hume. A.O. Hume, he was not Indian. He was a retired British official. A.O. Hume was a retired British official. And he also played a very vital key part in creation of this Indian National Congress. Actually, he brought all these Indians together, the 72 delegates, and he was the key person of INC, Alan Octavian Hume. So there are many names which we'll talk about. Let me tell you again, he is Dadabhai Nauroji, he is A.O. Hume. These two people you need to remember. Remember 1885, Mumbai, 72 delegates, Congress. Because of all these problems, all these acts which were deadly against the Indian people, especially against the freedom and expression of the Indians. A nation in the making. So how does our India starts being Indian? See, Indian National Congress, initially for 20 years, they were very moderate. As I said, 1885 just add 20. So for first 20 years till 1905, Congress were very moderate. The objectives and the methods, the techniques, the thoughts they have were very moderate, not very, I must say, very arrogant or, kind of krantikari, revolutionist. They don't have that kind of thought. The objectives and method were very simple. They wanted or they demanded that in the administration, the government administration, put more Indians. That is, in British rule, they wanted more Indians participation, though more Indians to be recruited or to be nominated or to be elected. They wanted the legislative councils, the Vidhan Parishad. They wanted in this legislative councils, they are being made, but they are not given power. First, give power to these legislative councils. And also, there were certain places where still legislative councils were not there. So they demanded that these legislative councils can be, or it should be introduced in the various prant, the provinces which we call today as states, where they are not there. Okay? And all the higher positions in the British rule, all the whites were there. So they wanted that in the higher position, we want Indians. We want people of Indian origin who understand India. We want them to be high position. You know, IS, Indian Administrative Service, UPSC, every Indian prepares for it or thinks for it. It was called as ICS earlier, Indian Civil Services. You know where the exams were held? It was in London. It was in the capital of UK. Can you, at that time, today also you cannot go to UK easily. At that time, how can people go to UK? So they said, please do these exams here. Try to hold this exam here in India. So all these Indianization demand were basically against racism. Because it was racism all over. The Indians and the whites, they were different people in terms of British rule. So it was against racism. Because the important position, the important job, it was all monopolized by, it was all taken over by, it was all held by the white officials, the Britishers. Okay? What Britishers will think that these Indians, we cannot give them the positions of responsibility. They are not learned, they have different thoughts, they have different culture, tradition, all these things they have in mind. So we cannot give them this responsibility task. They won't be able to do it. We are the people who will do it. So, one more thing was happening. A Britishers official, Viceroy, Governor General, all these officers, army and administration officers, what they were doing? What they were doing? They were taking the salary. They were in big positions. They will send most of the part of the salary, almost 75%, to UK. They'll send all the salary to UK. So all the money they are earning in India is going to UK. So the money draining is going on. They are earning here, they are sending it to UK. Right? If you give jobs to Indians, if there are Indians in the government, then those people, the money will remain here. Why would Indian money go to some alien foreign country who is ruling us in a bad way, not in a good way? There is one other thing. Right now, we have judiciary and executive as pillars of democracy. That is the Nyayapalika and the Karyapalika. Right? We have Nyayapalika, Karyapalika and one more legislative, that is Vidhaika. These are the three pillars of democracy right now. But at that time, the Nyayapalika and Karyapalika, that is the judiciary and the executive, they were together. That is, there is no separation of judiciary and executive. And they also asked for the repeal of Arm Act. They want this Arm Act to be abolished. That is, they wanted more freedom for speech, for expression. That is the Vernacular Act that was there. So they want more freedom for Indians, because why can't an Indian can speak in India? So repeal means to undo a law, to officially end the validity of something which has been made as a law. For example, we have CAA, we have the agriculture law, Krishi Kanun, 3 agriculture Kanun has come, and most of the farmers are against this law. So what the government can do, it can just repeal those, discuss it again, and it can, floor it again in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? So this is what is called repeal. I'll just give you an example, right? As I told you, the Congress was formed with elite people, but they raised economic issues. They said that this is the British rule who has led the problems of India, that is the poverty, the famines. This is caused because of the British rule. They were saying that the amount of land revenue, the kar, the taxes they have put on people, either it is a peasant or a zamindar, And what they are doing is, whatever grain is produced here, they are sending it to Europe. So when you are sending the grain to Europe, what will Indian people eat? There is always a food shortages. So this is what Indian Congress demanded, and they said the revenue has to be cut. Most of the money you are putting it into military expenditure. You need to curtail that expenditure, and the irrigation. Why they were asking for funds for irrigation? Please understand, we are in monsoon region. Indian agriculture and Indian agriculturists and the peasants and farmers, they are dependent heavily on the monsoon. If monsoon fails, the crop will fail. What do we eat? And the main thing is salt tax. You are putting tax on salt, and you're taking. You have all the control of this salt. That is production and distribution. The forest dwellers, the people who belong to the forest, you have made all the laws against them. Now they cannot enter the land they were born to be in. So what you see here is that, as I said, Indian National Congress people think that it is a elite class, educated class, lawyer class. But the Congress is asking or demanding for everyone, even the poor, even the middle class, even the upper class. So the Congress was asking about everything, demanding about everything. Right? See, these moderate leaders, they had a different method or technique. They just wanted that everyone should be aware how this injustice is carried out by British. That is, the British rule is unjust. They cannot give you nyaya, they cannot give you justice. They were writing in a newspaper, they were writing articles, they were trying to show that the economic ruin or economic problem, the poverty, see, people are dying of hunger. This is just because of the Britishers. They were criticizing the Britishers in their speeches wherever it happens. And they also sent the representative, the Congress representative went to each nook and corner of India just to mobilize the public opinion, just to tell them that the Britishers, what they are doing, you need to know, you need to stand against them with us. Because the freedom and justice will only come when we rule or we are there. Britishers cannot. Okay? And British should understand our demand and follow our demand. Freedom is birthright. People were moderate in Congress earlier. But now came the different thought, Lal Bal Pal. We'll talk about them in the next discussion. Is our birthright. We have seen that in Congress, most of them were moderates. They were relying upon the politics of prayers, Nivedan ki niti. But the new consciousness or new people came, new thoughts came. 1890s, various Indians, they started raising questions. They started raising thoughts about the way, the political style, method, technique the Congress is adopting. So what kind of method you are adopting? This is not the way. Why are you politely asking British? Do it with anger. Do it with something strong. So Bipin Chandra Pal from Bengal, Lal Bal Pal as they call them. From Maharashtra, it's Bal Gangadhar Tilak. From Punjab, it's Lala Lajpat Roy. Okay? Bengal, Maharashtra, Punjab, different points of India. Now these and other people, they were Amul Parivartanwadi. That is, they were thinking about radical objectives and method. They had a different objective, method, technique to deal with the British rule. So they criticized the moderates. Nivedan ki niti, why are you praying them? Why are you playing politics of praying? They emphasized, these people, that we need to be self-reliant. Okay, Atmanirbhar. Today also our Prime Minister says Atmanirbhar. So self-reliance they are talking about. They were also talking about doing something constructive. What all is done. Now we need to find different ideas, different thoughts to deal with this rule, to deal with this regime. Just saying that British officials or British people are of good intention and they will help, they'll understand our problem. No, this is not the way. People have to fight for their Swaraj. Swaraj means the Raj of ourselves. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he raised a slogan, and that slogan was very popular till now. That is, freedom is my birthright and I shall have it. स्वतंत्रता मेरा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और मैं इसे लेके रहूंगा. This is what Bal Gangadhar Tilak said. Now here is one more picture in your NCERT of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Now you see this newspaper on the table. This is called Kesari. It's called Mukhpatra, or you can say what Marathi newspaper actually. It was in Marathi language, and it was the main paper very critical about the British's rule. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he was the editor, he was the chief, and he used to write, and people used to write on this newspaper criticizing the British rule. Now there is an event, very big. You see here George Curzon. He is called George Curzon. He is Viceroy Curzon. So under his say, when he was Viceroy, the Bengal was partitioned. So Bengal was divided. Now they were saying that Bengal is a very, very big province. At that time there was no concept of state. So it's big, province. And you see Bihar was already there. Parts of Odisha was already there in this big Bengal. So they were just saying that because of administrative convenience, prashasanik suvidha, because of this reason, we are forced, or there is no other choice but to partition this Bengal. Basically, it was, you can say, a close tie or nexus between businessmen and officials. People think that this partition was not just done because of administrative convenience, but because there was a close tie or relationship between officials and businessmen. There is one more reason which people think, that Bengalis, they are intelligent people, they are creative people, they are the best people we find on this globe. So the IQ level, the political awareness, everything was there. The leadership. See, Rashtragan has come from national. This has come from Bengal. Vande Mataram has come from Bengal. Even the RSS, it was being created by Bengal person only. So when we partition these Bengalis, then only Britishers were divide and rule policy. So they divided these people. Okay. So what they did was, when they separated the Bengal, they put this East Bengal and merged it with Assam. They didn't keep it East Bengal as separate. So West Bengal and East Bengal. No. What they did, they took the part East Bengal and they actually merged it with Assam. So just because the Bengali politicians were very strong, very noteworthy, and they have a lot of influence on Bengali people, in order to divide and rule, divide the Bengali politician, divide the Bengali people, 1905 partition was done. Now everyone was angry. Every single person was infuriated. Now you see here, this is a picture. Now this is whole Bengal previously. This whole picture. Now you see that red is the Bengal. Now the right one, green, is Eastern Bengal, and it was being merged with the right Assam. Okay? So the Eastern Bengal was combined with Assam. Why? If you really want to have administrative convenience, why not to have Bengal and Eastern Bengal, West Bengal, East Bengal? Why are you combining with Assam? Okay? So this people got very, very dissatisfied, infuriated, angry. And the main thing is, there were two parts of Congress, moderates and radicals, right? Lal Bal Pal were from radicals. So one were liberals or moderates, other were radicals. And both of this section of Indian National Congress, you call it moderates, you call it radicals, or you call it anybody, they all opposed the division of Bengal. So what they did? Everyone. And because Indian National Congress was the key political entity, they organized public meetings, they organized different demonstrations, and there were a mass protest. Everyone came out of their house and they were protesting against this Bengal division. So this struggle, very strong struggle, was called as Swadeshi movement, and it was strongest in Bengal, no doubt, because the partition of Bengal. But everywhere people could relate to it. Like if you go to Andhra, especially the Delta Andhra region, this particular movement was called as Vande Mataram movement, right? In Andhra Pradesh, Delta Andhra Pradesh, it was called as Vande Mataram movement. So I'll just show you the picture. This is one of the picture of Swadeshi movement. You need to know the date, 1905 to 1909. So these are the people came out of the street just to show their infuriation or their they are against this partition. You know, you're just partitioning, you're just combining at your will without even people being noticed. So the Swadeshi movement, if you know the word Swadeshi, Swadeshi SWA is Swa. Swa means we. That is, this Desh means country. So this is our country, and we want our country, and now we will do everything by ourselves. We don't need you. We don't need British. So we need to have our national education, Swadeshi enterprise, national education. Even we will have the education in the Indian languages. Okay. In order to fight for Swaraj, the radicals basically, they said that we need to mass mobilize people. We need to boycott every institutions and whatever goods and products this British have or whatever they are bringing here. So we need a policy or the way, because this Swadeshi movement is all about ourselves, Indians. And some of them also suggested the idea of revolutionary violence, Krantikari Hinsa. You can understand people were thinking about violence also. Because this was required, what they were thinking is, this is necessary and important condition to overthrow Britishers from India. Revolutionary violence is a big thing, because prior to this, nobody has talked about this. From here it is okay. Now I'll just give you these 20th starting decades, century. There were other developments also, you need to know about them. I'll show you a picture. This is All India Muslim League. 1906 it was being established. There is a Lucknow Pact. I'll tell you about Lucknow Pact. Here is a picture of Lala Lajpat Rai, Lal Bal Pal, Lal. So he was a nationalist leader from Punjab. And when we talk about Congress, they were a radical group. So he was one of the leading member of one of the part of Indian National Congress radical group. And he was also the active member of Arya Samaj. We have talked about Arya Samaj earlier. So I was telling you about the certain developments. So in the beginning, see, I am talking about 1900 to 1910 and 1920. So what are the main development? It was the creation of Muslim League. So Muslim landlords, Muslim Nawab, they all grouped together and they met in Dhaka in 1906. Dhaka, present day capital of Bangladesh, and they created All India Muslim League. Now, League said something else. League said that the partition of Bengal is good. They supported it. Everyone was against it, but the Muslim League was saying, yes, it is okay. And they were also saying something, Muslim League, that we want separate electorates or Nirvachan Kshetra for Muslims. That is, the candidate will be Muslim and the people who are voting will also be Muslim. Okay, they wanted special electorates for Muslim people also. And you will be surprised to know the government also conceded the want. They agreed. And government actually reserved some seats now for Muslims in the councils. That is Vidhan Parishad or whatever councils were. I'll just talk about councils just now. But basically, whatever, say, Satta councils were there, for Muslims, some seats were reserved. And they will be only elected by Muslim voters. Right? So this is another very important aspect of Muslim League. And let me tell you about these two words because this is very important. Revolutionary violence, that is use of violence. That is, if you want to overthrow someone who is armed, you have to be armed. And council is an appointed or elected body of a people with an administrative, advisory or representative function. Basically, it's all about being elected or being nominated. So you can be a part of making policies, or you can say the rule. There was major one more development. 1907, Congress, because it was two part, moderates and radical. So Congress got split into two, because moderates were saying that this the way of boycotting, you are saying Krantikari Hinsa, you are saying revolutionary violence, you are suggesting use of force. We don't want it. The moderates said no boycotting, no force. But the radicals were saying no, we need to have revolutionary violence. So there was two partition of, or you can say the Congress was partitioned into two. Okay. So Tilak and his followers, because Tilak is from the radical part, so they were functioning now from outside. But after certain years, to be precise, around 8 years, in 1915, the moderates and radicals, they united again. They got united. So the Congress, which was split in 1907, it got combined in 1915 after 8 years. Right? And now, because already 1906 Muslim League was formed, and Muslim League was showing its power, so there was a Lucknow Pact being signed. So if you see here Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and this is a pact being signed by two parties. This pact was called Lucknow Pact. So which were the parties here? Lucknow Pact. There were two major entities now, Indian National Congress and Muslim League. So Congress already divided into two and united again. Muslim League was already there now, 1906. Their demand was also being considered. So now they have power. So they got combined and they had a Lucknow Pact. How this mass nationalism grew. There are various events and points I'm going to discuss. First is, after 1919, there was always a struggle against British. People were just fighting, demonstrating, doing everything to show their dissatisfaction, their plight and distress. Everyone was there. Now here, everyone came into here because demonstrations and public meetings and speeches. Now, in these movements, either it is farmer or peasant, either there are tribals or Adivasis, or even the students, even the women. Also, because at that time the factory workers were holding also the great power, the factory workers also, they used to join, and they were all joining in big numbers. And then what happened? Business groups. There were giant big business groups. They are powerful, they have money now. So what they were doing? They supported the Congress directly, actively in front of Britishers in 1920s. They said, we support Congress. Normally what will happen? The political party will get fund from these political groups right now, today I'm talking about. So whenever they become politician, they'll do things for these businessmen. Okay. But that time, they actively supported them. There's one more situation happened. First World War, 1914 till 1918 it happened. So you need to know the dates, So this is the First World War, and this took place between 1914 and 1918. World War, when different countries, or not two countries but multiple countries, they fight. And there is one more change. It was Russian Revolution, 1917. So I was talking about First World War. So this First World War has changed the economic and political situation in India drastically. Okay, previously, before First World War, it was different. First thing is, after First World War or during First World War, the defense expenditure was increased because British were ruling. British was one of the party in the First World War. So this First World War, the result was, there was defense expenditure and they were now levying tax on different people. Government has increased the tax. The military expenditure was increased, and because of this, the demand for the war supplies, because in military expenditure means the war supplies demand has to increase. So because of this, the prices of very basic commodity, it grew exponentially. And this created problem for whom? You, me, people, normal people, common people, right? But the business people, the big giant businesses, they actually got profited by this war. How? See, jute bags are required, cloth is required, rail is required, because they all are used in the wars. So now there was a demand for all this, and at this time the imports which were coming to India, it drastically you can say minimized. So those who were actually doing the business in these requirement, they were becoming powerful because they were getting profits, and now they were in demanding position. So they demanded Britishers that we need more opportunities. So these big industrialist business groups, they asked for greater opportunities. Okay, I hope you got the scenario. First World War, things are required. Those who created things got popular or say rich, and now they are demanding more opportunities. Now, after war, what will happen? The British has to expand the army. Now they need army men. So from the villagers or from villages, they pressurize that the soldiers has to be supplied. That is, the poor villagers, they were forced to join the army. Now when they are pressurized, they have to join it. Now these soldiers, that they are sent to different places, because wherever the fight was going on, wherever the First World War was going on, these would go. Okay. Now when these villagers would go, and when they come back, and people have brains. So when they came back, they thought, Begani Shadi mein Abdullah Diwana, British is fighting with some other country, and Indians are fighting for British, and British is not taking care of us. They are ruling in a bad way. Why would we die for Britishers? So basically, why are we in between? We are fighting for someone they don't care for us. So the Africans and Asians, basically these are exploited because they are under British rule, colonial rule. So they decide, these all army men who were entered in a different way, they started opposing colonial rule. So everyone was against the colonial rule, right? Because when people come back and when they see the problem of the war, then they will know. And in between this, the Russian revolution also took place in 1917. So they were talking about, Russians were talking about peasants, worker. Indians also full of peasants, farmers and workers. So this kind of ideas of socialism also came into the mind of Indian people, Indian nationalists, and they inspired Indian nationalists by the ideas of socialism, which was basically for peasants and workers. Okay. So this is how the growth of mass nationalism took place. Now Gandhiji. Now he emerged as a mass leader, Mahatma Gandhi, because under those circumstances, India was really needing for a mass leader. When he was 46, he arrived from South Africa in 1915. Now when he was in South Africa, he led various non-violent marches, and this was against the racism. So what we see here is, this is a picture of South Africa only. So he was doing all that demonstration and the Dharna Pradarshan there also. That is why he was internationally known, and he was known as a respected leader. And because for this campaign, he came into contact with Hindu, Muslim, Parsis, Christian, Gujaratis, Tamil, North Indians, upper class, lower class, merchants, lawyers, workers, everyone. Now I'll show you certain pictures here. Now this picture you see, this is the picture of Natal Congress. And this Natal Congress, so he was one of the founder member of this Natal Congress. In 1895, it was being established. And where is Mahatma Gandhi? The middle one. You see here, it is difficult to remember or say recognize him, but he is in between. So it was basically against the racial discrimination. The blacks and browns are treated differently than the whites. Now if you see here, this is a picture of, their name is just going to come. He is Mr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and here we have Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Gandhiji, when he came, the first year he came, his guru, he advised him that you need to learn, you need to understand India first. So for one whole year, he was traveling across India. to know what people are thinking, what are their needs, and what is the overall situation of the country. Then only he'll be able to do certain things which are required from him. So wherever he went, the local movements. So he led that movement, or his earliest interventions were there. So it started with Champaran, then Kheda, then Ahmedabad. And when he came, or when he led all these different movements, he came into contact with Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And if I talk about Ahmedabad, he led mill worker strike in 1918. That is how, because he was natural leader, and people were eyeing upon him. So he has to prove also. So that is how he proved, and those all were successful movements. So now I'll just show you these places. This is the Champaran, Kheda and Ahmedabad we talked about. Kheda and Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and Champaran in Bihar, present day Bihar. So these are other places also being shown here, which are the important centers of Indian national movement. Chauri Chaura also is going to come. We'll talk about that, and Amritsar also, Jallianwala Bagh, and Dandi March, famous Dandi March. This is also we are going to talk. Rowlatt Satyagraha. Now, in order to understand this, we have to understand Rowlatt Act. So, in 1919, Gandhiji called everyone for a Satyagraha. And this was against what? It was against the Rowlatt Act. So, the Rowlatt Act was passed, and against this, Gandhiji said we have to do Satyagraha. That is why it is called as Rowlatt Satyagraha. What was the problem? This Rowlatt Act were basically curbing or finishing the fundamental rights like freedom of expression. And also, it is strengthening the police power, the British police power, you can say. So, in Rowlatt Act, what was being said? That anyone under suspicion, if you have suspicion on him, without any warrant, just on suspicion, he can be held in jail for 2 years without any trial. Please remember, without any trial. So this is just that anyone who is against Britishers, who is doing some demonstration, or whom they think that he or she is dangerous for our rule, they will just take him or her and put it behind the bars. Okay? So this was all about the Rowlatt Act. So Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Gandhiji, all these national leaders, they knew that this is against the basic freedom. This is actually fundamental right beheading. That is why they criticized this act as devilish and being tyrannical. So, they know what will happen because, Jinnah was a lawyer. So they called this act because they knew the intricacy. That is why they called this act as devilish and tyrannical. Right? So Gandhiji asked 6th April 1919 to be observed as a day of non-violent opposition to this act. Gandhiji is equivalent to non-violent. Please remember this. Non-violent. Right? Non-violence. So what happened here? All hartals were done, demonstrations were done, satyagraha sabhas were set up. So this was the first satyagraha which was pan-India. Pan-India means it was observed all over India. All other movements before this were, somewhat local only. But this Rowlatt Satyagraha was all India, first of its kind. So as I said, in April 19, mostly the demonstration and hartals were done against this Rowlatt Satyagraha. So government will do what? The thing they know the best. Brutal measures. Damankari. So then happened Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So let me just show you what happened here. So here what happened? Here is a ground. Now Jallianwala Bagh. Now it was Baisakhi day and most of the people came here for Mela to enjoy Baisakhi. That is 13 April 1919. But some of them were against. They came for Satyagraha also. And at the same time, General Dyer came with his force and he just ordered point blank shooting, killing of people. That is massacre, Hatya Kand. So these all, they are armless. They are just ordinary people. And this picture shows these are the walled compound where the round is showing the marks of the bullet. This is the picture of Jallianwala Bagh. People cannot go anywhere. It was being all boundaried by the General Dyer and his men. So it was open fire on a gathering of people, and these are the bullet marks which are being pointed. Now, when this happened, this was very brutal. Very brutal. Please remember, it was a very, in Punjab, Baisakhi is the most celebrated festival. And it happened in Amritsar. General Dyer did it. And 30th April 1919. So this is a very important date because Jallianwala Bagh massacre is always asked. So here, some of them were satyagrahis, but most of them were just normal people. So when it happened, Rabindranath Tagore, the most celebrated or most known person across the globe, he renounced his knighthood because he was in such a pain and anger because of this Jallianwala Bagh massacre. He said, I don't want this knighthood. Knighthood it was. Knighthood what? If someone has done exceptional work, the Britishers or British government or crown will give this award for some excellent personal achievement and public service. So he just sent back his award. Now during this satyagraha, Rowlatt Satyagraha, there is one more important thing which we noticed. Hindu and Muslims, because the tradition are different, cultures are different. So people always instigate, mainly the political parties. And there are certain people in both the communities, they fight. Normal Hindu Muslims, they are, from ancient times, they are friends. They don't bother who is Hindu Muslim. But here in this Rowlatt Satyagraha, Hindu and Muslims, the unity of these two communities was incomprehensible. Gandhiji was saying this India belongs to everyone, Hindu, Muslim and all other religion. And that is how these two communities came together for a single enemy or the common enemy, which is the Britishers. Right? So this was one of the key points we can take out of this Rowlatt Satyagraha. Now I'll tell you about Khilafat agitation and non-cooperation movement. What happened here is Khilafat Andolan, Asahyog Andolan. So Khilafat agitation has nothing to do with Indian national movement. Please remember this. What happened here is, you see this is an Arab area. This is Arab area. And if you see this portion is Turkey. Basically this all area was under Ottoman Empire. So the Britishers along with their allies, what they did, they defeated the Khalifa or Caliphate of Ottoman Empire. Mainly the Caliphate or Khalifa is the religious Muslim leader all over world. Means all the Muslim, they see him, they treat him as their natural leader. But because the Ottoman Empire was defeated, a sandhi or a treaty, very brutal treaty was imposed on this Ottoman Empire Khalifa. Now every Muslims all over the world wanted that this shouldn't happen, right? So Khilafat movement is basically related to this. So every Muslim was against this. So Indian Muslims were also against this. So Khilafat movement 1919 and 24, it's an Islamic movement. And if you see in India, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, these are Ali brothers. They said that Britishers had done this. So India also have Britishers and they're also doing the wrong deeds. So we need to do the Khilafat movement against them in India also. Being Muslim community. Right, we have in Hindu and Muslim community, so Muslim community also has to take action or stand against what is happening all over the world because of the Angrez, because of the Britishers. So this Turkish Empire, as I said, it was ruled by a Khalifa, which was Ottoman Sultan, and it was attacked by European powers, that is Britishers and their allies. I hope you understand. This is the Khilafat movement. It has nothing to do with Indian national movement. It has to do with the Britishers, which they were doing outside. So in 1920, British imposed this harsh treaty against the Turkish Sultan, Ottoman Empire Sultan, or as we know him as Khalifa. And he was most respected Muslim leader across world for the Muslims. Okay. So you see here. So Indian Muslims, they wanted that this Khalifa should be allowed to retain control over these Muslim Pavitra places, sacred places, which was earlier in the Ottoman Empire. So that is how, other Muslims were also doing. So Indian Muslim also wanted that something is happening outside, and if it is going to affect us, we need to take stand against it. So as I said, the leaders of Khilafat agitation were basically those who started it, or those who said that we have to do this Khilafat. They were basically Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, which I showed you in the picture also. Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. And they requested Gandhiji that we need to please engage in this Khilafat agitation also. So Gandhiji saw this because it was already Hindu-Muslim were united in Rowlatt Satyagraha. So he said, okay, he urged Congress to start the Khilafat movement, to start the non-cooperation movement, and to start demanding for Swaraj. Swaraj. So Jallianwala massacre, Punjab wrongs were done. So he urged Congress to campaign against this Jallianwala massacre, Khilafat wrong, Khilafat Andolan, and demand for Purna Swaraj. Not Purna Swaraj, actually it was Swaraj. Purna Swaraj was something different by Mr. Tilak. Okay. So now all this started, and when it gained momentum, this Asahyog Andolan or non-cooperation movement, it gained momentum in 1921 and 1922. Why? Because the students left the government schools and colleges, and many known lawyers. You see here Motilal Nehru, he was the father of our first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. So Motilal Nehru, and most respected from Bengal, it is C.R. Das, Chitrandan Das, and then we have C. Rajagopalachari. He was also the first key person of India after independence. I'll talk about him. And also Asaf Ali. So all these, they left their practice. They were big, very respected lawyers. And many people, they just surrendered the titles being given by Britishers. For example, we just saw that Mr. Tagore, he surrendered this knighthood. And then the people, they were celebrating this using this bonfire. They were getting hold of foreign cloth and they were destroying it. Actually, they were putting them in fire. So it was a bonfire. That is, they were just against all this which are coming from foreign or from Britishers. And if you see, because of this in 1920 and 1922 in between, the import of foreign cloth also fell down. So 1920, 1922, you have to remember Asahyog Andolan, non-cooperation movement. And why this stopped also we talked about. We will just talk about. There was an incident. So what were people doing here? What were people doing here? See, everyone was involved. Some or the other way. So Gandhiji was saying, no, first thing is ahinsatmak. That is, it has to be non-violent. Any kind of movement has to be non-violent. So it can be demonstration, it can be march, it can be public gatherings, it can be speeches, everything. So every class, every group, almost every, they all were there, but they were interpreting Gandhiji call in a different manner, in their own manner. Basically, the local problem, they attached this with the Gandhiji's call. That is, the Khilafat agitation, the non-cooperation movement, the Swaraj Abhiyan, all these, they took it in the way that their local problems is linked to this. Okay. So I'll just give an example of Kheda. What happened? Kheda, Gujarat, there was Patidar peasants, and they also organized non-violent campaigns against the high land revenue, because the revenue or the tax were levied were very high. So they all, because it was a local problem, it was a local problem. So they also organized non-violent campaigns. So they listened to Gandhiji and they added their local problem in order to counter the high land revenue. Okay. And if I take you to coastal Andhra and the interior of Tamil Nadu, what we see here is the interior of this place, Tamil Nadu and coastal Andhra, the liquor shop, sharab ki dukane, they were picketed or gherao. Gherao. That is, see, if people make a chain of some place, nobody can enter it. That is called picketing. Gherao. I can take you to Guntur district of Andhra Pradesh also. Here what happened? The tribals and the poor peasant, the poor farmers, they were also doing satyagraha. They staged a number of forest satyagrahas. So forest satyagraha is basically against the problem of different laws and different acts being passed by the Britishers, which were against these tribals, because tribals have come from forest. They know how to live in forest, and the Britisher has stopped them from going to the forest. So everyone was believing that Gandhi ji would do something, or he will bring these taxes down, reduce, and also all these forest regulation and kanuns and laws, this will be abolished because Gandhi ji is there. So that is how everyone was thinking about Gandhi Raj, that Gandhi Raj will come. So if I take you to Sindh, which is not today in India, it is now in Pakistan. So in Pakistan, there is a place called Sindh. You know Sindhi people? That is how we call them Sindhi, because they are from Sindh. So this Sindh, now in Pakistan, the Muslim leaders and the peasants, they got very happy, very enthusiastic, because the Gandhiji was also calling for Khilafat call. So it was basically for a Muslim leader, and Gandhiji has no division for Hindu Muslims. He was taking India as a whole. So that is how this. See, I'll tell you about Picket. Picket, I told you about Mahants, religious functionaries of Sikh Gurdwaras. I'm going to talk about. So in Punjab also something was happening. So all these, in every temple you will find some Mahants. So the Akali movement was basically against these Mahants. If there is a Gurdwara, there will be a Mahant, and this Mahant was basically supported by Britishers, and now he is running the Gurdwara. So now actual person whom Sikh want, he is not Mahant. The Mahant is supported by British. So Akali movement wanted these Mahants to be out of this Gurdwara, and actual Mahants which they supposed to put in there, they started this Akali movement. Then Assam, what for Assam is famous? Tea garden. So the tea garden laborers, they started chanting and shouting, Gandhi ji Maharaj ki jai, Gandhi Maharaj ki jai, Gandhi Maharaj ki jai. Because also they demanded for increase in their salary, increase in their wages, because they were powered by the idea that Gandhi Raj has to come. And most of them left the British owned plantation. The plantation which is owned by the British people, most of them, they left this plantation. Okay. Now these are different people doing different act. One more thing. Assamese, there is a song, Vaishnav song. Vaishnav song. So it is basically referring to the Krishna. And now what they did, they replaced the name of Krishna with Gandhi Raja. And now they are singing the same song, not with Krishna, Lord Krishna, but with Gandhi Raja. So what we see here is very important thing is, Gandhiji is now treated as a Mahatma. Mahatma means, Maha means very big, Atma is soul, very high standard, big soul. So you see here, he is Sarthi. Gandhiji is a Sarthi. Sarthi means what? He is on the chariot, and he is handling this chariot. He is driving the Krishna's chariot. Right? So Gandhiji was not only a leader, he was now treated as a Masiha. And no question about it, he was a Masiha, because he was, people were thinking that misery and poverty, he is going to help them overcome all these problems. See, many ordinary people, they did all by themselves, but they will give all the credit to Gandhiji. Whatever they achieved in their local area, they give the credit to Gandhiji. I'll take you to one place which is called Uttar Pradesh now, but previously it was United Provinces. So in there we have Pratapgarh. In Pratapgarh, there were illegal eviction going on of tenants. Illegal eviction is basically forcible and unlawful throwing out of tenants from the land they rent. So this was been done in an illegal way, not in a lawful way. So people, they started a movement against this illegal eviction, and they were successful also. But because of this successful movement, they were crediting this again to Gandhiji. They were doing it for themselves. They made it successful. But credit was Gandhiji, because Gandhiji was all over. His every word was very important. And all these were doing in Non-Violence Act. But there were certain people, like certain tribals and certain peasants also. They were taking Gandhiji's name, but they were not conforming or abiding by the Gandhian ideals or Gandhiji's rules and followings, or what he was thinking. They took to violence. That is, Gandhiji was saying non-violence, but they were taking violence. So let me tell you again about this. You see, all the big leaders of that time are shown here. Swaraj Mandir. So this is how you see all in Mahabharata, Krishna was running the chariot and there was Arjun. So he was also guiding Arjun for the war. So here now the Gandhiji has replaced Krishna. And you see Nehruji also, Jawaharlal Nehru. Here you see Bose Sahab. Here you see Dadabhai Nauroji, C.R. Das and Motilal Nehruji, Tilak Sahab, and all the big giants are seen here. So you can understand the value of Gandhiji in this struggle movement. This is chapter number 11, the making of the national movement. So what happened between 1922 and 1929? So what we have seen is non-cooperation movement, Asahayog Andolan. It was going in full flow. What happens in February 1922? Gandhiji calls it off abruptly. Why? There was a big reason. Because Gandhiji was all about non-violence. So in United Provinces, that is Uttar Pradesh, there is a place called Chauri Chaura. So what happens here is, some peasants, they were demonstrating against certain thing, right? Asahayog Andolan. But the police fired and some of the peasants, they were killed. Now this peaceful demonstrator now got angry and they went to Chauri Chaura police station and they set it on fire. 21 policemen were killed. And as I said, Gandhiji only wanted non-violence. And since this non-violence was breached, he abruptly called off non-cooperation movement. So what happened in Chauri Chaura? It stopped the non-cooperation movement which was going on. So once this NCM stopped, it was called off. Gandhiji stressed the Congress that you need to go to the rural areas, do certain constructive work. That is, if the Britishers are not giving things to rural areas, you need to do something. Now here two people, C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru Sahab. Now these two gentlemen, they were basically lawyers. So there were other people also. They were saying that the Congress or party should fight elections for the councils. That is, in order to influence the government policies, government rules, government regulation, we need to be in the government. For that, we need to fight elections. So this was basically raised by C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. They were arguing about this. Then finally all these things were going on and there was a new movement, that was civil disobedience movement, Savinay Avagya Andolan. Okay, so this is civil disobedience movement. In between this, there were two very important developments. So there were two organizations. One of this is Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, RSS, and the RSS is backing a party which is BJP, and BJP is now all over India. So this was formulated in mid-1920s. RSS, Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, the ideology is Hindutva. That is, basically they are working for Hindus and trying to demean the Muslims, like, we have seen that. So that is what they say. So this happened between mid-1920s. There is one more party which is Communist Party of India. Now these Communist Party of India and RSS, they were formed. And one more person was very active at this time. It was revolutionary nationalist Bhagat Singh. He was also very active. So Bhagat Singh. Now Bhagat Singh Inqilab Zindabad. So now he was basically a Sikh. But for the, cutting hairs in Sikh is very out of, religious. So he was a revolutionary nationalist. And he was a great soul. So he was against, and his friends were against the British rule or colonial rule, and also the rich people who were actually exploiting the peasants and workers. So these two they were against. So for this reason, for this purpose, he and his friends, they founded a party called HSRA, Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. HSRA was formed in 1928 at a very famous place in Delhi, which is called Firoz Shah Kotla. Firoz Shah Kotla. So the members of the HSRA, they also assassinated, that is killed, Saunders, General Saunders. Who was General Saunders? There was a demonstration and it was led by Lala Lajpat Rai. So there was a lathi charge, and because of the lathi charge, Lala Lajpat Rai got hurt and finally he died. So in order to take the revenge, Saunders was killed by HSRA member. Along with his fellow nationalist, which is B.K. Dutt, means Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt, they threw a bomb in Central Legislative Assembly when the session was going on 8th April 1929. This is a very important date. 8 April 1929. And they also threw some leaflet and the pamphlets, flyers you can say. And these flyers were saying that we don't intend to kill anyone. We just want that those deaf ears, people are not listening, Britishers are not listening, the foreign government is not listening about all the exploitation going on. So this is what we want, or we could do to let them hear what we desire, what are our requirements. So finally Bhagat Singh Sahab, he was sent to trial, and just at 23 he was being executed, Phansi, he was given Phansi. One more picture you see here. This is about the demonstration of Simon Commission. So what happened here is, in 1927, the British government, which was in England, they decided to send a commission, that is a group of people, which was headed by Lord Simon. Now this Lord Simon, they are going to decide the political future of India. So the Indian political future is decided by Britishers, and the problem was, in this commission, there was not a single Indian, no Indian representative. So you are trying to decide India's future, and you don't have Indians. So this created outrage. This people got very angry. So all political groups, they decided to boycott this commission. So this commission, when it arrived, there were demonstration, and Simon go back what this Simon Commission faced when they came to India. Now one more important date, you will realize why 26 January is so important today also. How it started. So this decade, 1920 to 1930, it closed with a Congress resolution, and the resolution was all about Purna Swaraj. They said we have to fight for Purna Swaraj. That is, we need complete independence. We don't want now some bits and pieces. So in 1929, it happened under the presidentship of Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru was the president of Indian National Congress at that time. So now he said that on 26 January 1930, we are going to celebrate Independence Day, Swatantrata Divas on this date. That is how this 26 January has came. Now coming to Gandhi, Gandhi ji has done so many good deeds. One of very important is about salt. Now see, salt is used by rich, salt is used by or eaten by poor also. Without salt, you will not be able to eat food. Now this salt, there was a tax on this salt. The government has put salt, and the manufacturing, also the sale of this salt, was in the hand of only or monopolized by the Britishers only. There was no Indian involved. So Gandhi said, what is this? You are taxing the salt? This is the most important essential item of anybody's food. So you see the followers, Gandhiji and his followers, they marched for 240 miles. Please remember, 1 mile is 1.6 kilometer. So 240 miles, they walked from Sabarmati to coastal town of Dandi. So from Sabarmati they went up to Dandi. So it is near sea coast, and they broke the law by gathering natural salt. So they picked this salt, gathered this natural salt, and they publicly the act salt law they broke. They also took the boiling water, they boiled the water, sea water, and they produced salt from it also. So they wanted to show that we are breaking it in front of you, because this is the essential item. The Gandhiji, if you see, and this is the date 6th April 1930, Dandi I am talking about. So he is picking up the lump of salts and natural salt basically. One more picture I want to highlight here is what is the route. This is Gujarat I am talking about. This is Sabarmati Ashram, and he and his followers, and then 240 miles they were just walking, remember. So it ends up to Dandi. This must be around 350 or 400 kilometers, I guess. So when we are talking about freedom struggle, there were women also involved. So we just talked about men, but it is not like that. We'll talk about Sarojini Naidu and others also. So either young, old, single, married, the women coming from rural or urban areas, from conservative or liberal homes, they all were involved in some or the other way for the Indian freedom. So their participation cannot be ignored. So I'll talk about Ambabai now. Ambabai was from Karnataka. So she was married when she was just 12. Ambabai from Karnataka married only when she was 12. When she became 16, widowed. And she started picketing Gherao, the foreign cloth and liquor shops in Udupi. I'm talking about Udupi. This is a district in Udupi, very nice place. So she was involved in picketing, Gherabandi. Now Ambabai was always arrested. She was sentenced, then rearrested, then she was released, then arrested. So in between, when she comes out of the jail, she made speeches. She used to teach spinning. She also organized Prabhat Feris. So at this time, Ambabai was saying, this time when I am out of the jail, I regard this as the happiest days of my life, because this gives me a new purpose or commitment for my country. So this purpose and commitment is not only shown by Ambabai, but various women from all walks of life. Now you will be surprised to know that I just talked about Dandi March, Salt Satyagraha. So Gandhiji was initially opposing the women participation. The women shouldn't go with us. Sarojini Naidu, she persuaded Gandhiji that we need to have women with us if they want. And then finally Gandhiji agreed. And it was a success, grand success. So as I said, the peasants, tribals, women participated in enormous number. And the government would do what? They would use brutal action, forceful action against these satyagrahis. Thousands of them were sent to jail. So these struggles, those were going on. Finally, they gave result. They bore fruit, it is being said here. The government of India at that time, the British rule, the Government of India Act of 1935. Now it was prescribing the provincial autonomy. Right now we have states. At that time the states were called as province. So governments prescribed as provincial autonomy for different states. And also it announced the elections. The elections for provincial legislatures. Wherever province was there was provincial legislature. In 1937, it was Vidhan Sabha like today we have. So they announced elections for these provincial legislatures in 1937. So what happened here is Congress, there were 11 provinces, 7 out of 11, Congress won with flying colors. But in between, one more thing happened. I'm talking about 1939. So 1937, Congress won 7 states. From 1939 till 1945, 1 September 1939 till 2nd September 1945. It was Second World War. Basically, Germany was the main key player here. So the British was also one of the party. So British were fighting against the Germans, against the Hitler. So the Congress was against Hitler. Congress was against Hitler because Hitler was ruthlessly killing the Jews. It was basically an ethnic cleansing, gas chamber cleaning. This was being done by Jews, for Jews, by Germans. So Congress were against Hitler. So Congress said, let us support British now, because British is fighting against Hitler. So they just said that we are going to support you, but once the war is over, you have to give us independence. We are going to support you, but you have to free us. But British said no, not possible. And then what happened? Congress ministries resigned from all these 7 provinces where they made the government, where they were people will elected of Congress. So provincial autonomy, right now we have states. So the capacity of the provinces to make relatively independent decision while remaining within the federation, that is the Indian Federation. Right now we have the same situation. You see here Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu is with Mahatma Gandhi. This is the picture of Paris 1931. And she was very active. Naidu was a very big leader, significant leader. If you see in Dandi March also, she was involved. So she was the first Indian woman to become the president of Indian National Congress in 1925. This question is asked generally, right? So quit India, and what happened later? So quit India is basically leave India. So Mahatma Gandhi, now he decided that we have to start a new phase of movement. This was done in the middle of World War 39 till 45. It was around 1942 actually. So from 1939 to 1945, it was Second World War. And in between 1942 around, Gandhiji started a new phase in the middle of this war. And he said, now British has to quit. British must quit. This was Quit India movement. Angrezo Bharat Chodo. And he said, you have to do or die. Means the people, either they do or they die. And you have to do it all non-violently. No one has to take arm. No one has to fight. Even somebody slaps on one cheek, give him second cheek. So Gandhiji and various leaders, they were jailed. And the movement, but it spread across. The peasant and the youth, they just gave up their studies. They joined this Quit India movement. And there are two very important things. Communication media, Britishers were having, and all the symbols which British were having, the state were having. This communication and the landmarks of Britishers, they were attacked all over the country. And some places people set up their own governments. This also happened. So what was the first response? British always repression. So Damankari, they did this thing. And if I give you the statistics, by end of 1943, 90,000 people got arrested. And 1,000 were killed by police firing. Can you imagine? 1,000 were killed by police firing. And finally, because the rebellion was so strong, Indians were so strong, finally, British has to listen and they got to their knees. Right? Because, this will, this commitment, this thought, they can't absorb it. This is a Quit India movement picture of August 1942. You see, demonstrator how they are lying, how they were arrested, they were killed, injured. Now, INA, let us talk about Subhash Chandra Bose. You see, he's a very important key figure. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose, SCB, Indian National Army, what this is all about? He was basically a radical nationalist. He was with the idea that if we do violence also, that is, because they are having an army, we also fight with an army, well-trained army. But Gandhiji was all about non-violence. So he was saying, no, I am against your idea. He was actually praising Gandhiji for everything. But he was against the idea of ahimsa. He was saying that by ahimsa, the father of nation. So what he did was, in January 1941, he secretly left Calcutta. He went to Singapore via Germany. People says that he also met Hitler. So through Germany, via Germany, he went to Singapore. And in Singapore, he created an army that is called as Azad Hind Fauj, or Indian National Army, INA we call it, to free India. In 1944, the Indian National Army from the northeast, Imphal and Kohima, they tried to enter. But finally, they were stopped by the Britishers. So the INA members were imprisoned, they were tried, and people across all the country from all walks of life, they participated in the movement against the INA trials, because you know how these trials were going on. So this is the power of Subhash Chandra Bose. Here are certain key figures. He is Maulana Azad. So he was the member of Congress Working Committee CWC. This picture you see is of 1942 of Sevagram, Wardha, around 3 hours from Nagpur. So Maulana Azad, he was born in Makkah, very, very sacred place, to a Bengali father, and the mother was Arab mother. And he was knowing various languages, and he was a great scholar of Islam, so Islamic studies. And he was also an exponent of the notion of Wahadat-e-Deen. What does it mean? Is that all religion are one. They always say about good things. In Gandhian movement, he was an active participant and he was also an advocate or propagator of Hindu-Muslim unity. Hindu-Muslim unity, he was a key figure and thereby he also opposed the Muhammad Ali Jinnah's two-nation theory of India and Pakistan. So he was against this. Now this gentleman we talked about earlier also, he is called Chakravarti Rajagopalachari. He is C. Rajagopalachari. And here you see him speaking to Gandhiji. And this was before Gandhi Jinnah talks in 1944. So he was a veteran novelist and also he was a leader of salt satyagraha in the southern part of the country, South India. Southern part, salt satyagraha, he was the leader. C. Rajagopalachari, he was also known as Rajaji. And he was also the member of interim government which was formed in 1946. And when India became independent, he was the first Indian Governor General. C. Rajagopalachari, first Indian Governor General. So this question is generally asked, who is the first Governor General of India? Here you see the Iron Man, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And he was the key figure for us, important role in the negotiation for independence between 1945 and 1947. Basically, Patel, he came from a very peasant-based family, impoverished. And the base was Nadiad in Gujarat. So basically, he was a Gujarati. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Sardar is the Padvi given to him, the honor given to him. Iron Man, he was the organizer of freedom movement from 1918 onwards. He also served as president of Congress in 1931. Here you see Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Previously, he was a key figure for independence. So 1942 picture he's seen with Mahatma Gandhi. Until 1920, he was a key advocate of Hindu-Muslim unity because there was nothing called Hindu-Muslim in his mind. And he also was the main key figure in Lucknow Pact, which was between Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. And 1934, Muslim League, when it was, basically he was the key figure. After that, speaking about Pakistan, that is a two-nation theory he was believing in because he was believing that Muslim will always be secondary and they will go unrepresented. That we see today also. Towards independence and partition. So 1940, Muslim League actually moved a resolution. And they moved a resolution, Prastav Parit, that is independent states for Muslim in the northern western, if this is India, this is Kashmir, assume it to be Kashmir. This is northern western part, which is present day Pakistan, and eastern area, which is present day Bangladesh. So he was saying that we need independent states for Muslim because these are Muslim majority states. And at that time, resolution which was there was not mentioning about Pakistan. It was never mentioned at that time, nor even they were talking about partition at that time, 1940. If I take you to late 1930s, League actually saw various things. That's why they came for partition and they started thinking about Pakistan. First thing they saw that the culture, the tradition Muslims and Hindus have, they are separate. So it's difficult for them to be together because they saw in between 1920s and 1930s, India saw a lot of tension between Hindu and Muslim groups. Politics always is there. So they provoke these and the people fight. In a provincial election of 1937, the League was convinced that Muslims will be in minority, they are minority, they will always be in minority. That is, if any democratic structure is formed, they will always be in second fiddle, that is in second place. They can never represent or maybe they may go unrepresented. Nobody will think of Muslims. So one more thing is this, that the Muslims, when they are getting unrepresented, or because 14-15% today also is a good say chunk of people. And one more thing happened in between. See, Muslim League asked Congress that let us form a joint collaboration and let us go for United Provinces in 1937. And Indian National Congress point blank way denied, no, we don't want to be with you. So these are certain things which has created Muslim League what we see today. So that is how the partition came into being, right? Because Congress was failing. They were not even thinking about a majority, a major majority. Basically, India is a Hindu majority country, but Muslims were also there. So Congress were not even interested or able to mobilize Muslims. And in this case, League was able to mobilize in 1930s, and that is how the Muslim League got support of the Muslims. So when 1945, when the Second World War ended, 2nd September, now British opened negotiation between two, the Congress and the League, because British was talking about two strong parties, Indian National Congress and Muslim League. The problem was, what will be the political future, or what will be the future of India? The problem came that Congress was saying that Muslim League cannot represent all the Muslims of India, because Muslim League was saying all the Muslims we are representing. Congress was saying no. There are so many Muslims which still supports us. So that was the deadlock condition. And what happened after that? 1946 there was an election. Congress, the seats it had, general constituencies, it had a pretty good success. But the seat reserved for Muslim, the League success was spectacular, means 100% result. The Muslim League won with flying colors. Right? Now they thought, okay, we have to come with a demand for Pakistan. We need to think about a particular religion or religious creed also. In March 1946, what happened? March 1946 I'm talking about. British cabinet happened to send a 3-member mission to Delhi to examine the demand, which is the demand for Pakistan. So what is going to be happening after that? Now the mission, when it talked to multiple parties, it suggested that India should remain united and like a loose confederation with autonomy to Muslim majority areas. That is, Muslim majority area should given some power also, some autonomy. But Congress was against it. So there was a problem of again deadlock condition. So there were mostly Congress and Muslim League has a deadlock again. They were not agreeing in this front also. So now you understood why partition happened. The partition was inevitable because of certain political thoughts or say afterthought or gaining power. All these things happened. This is Gandhiji you see with Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. And this is Bombay session of Congress of July 1946. Now here you see a very key figure. He is Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He was a Pashtun leader from Northwest Frontier Province. And you see him with colleagues at a peace march through Bihar in March 1947. So he was a Pashtun leader, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. You can say that it is present day Pakistan and coming from Northwest Frontier Province. So Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, you see him with Gandhiji, you can understand how important figure he was. And this is just a March picture. He was also called as Badshah Khan. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was also called as Badshah Khan. And he was a founder of one of the sanstha, one of the organization which is called as Khuda-e Khidmatgar. And they were talking about non-violent movement. He was key supporter of that. And Badshah Khan was strongly opposing the partition of India because he was against this partition. And he also criticized, because he was in Congress, so he was criticizing the Congress colleague that they have accepted this 1947 division. Why the Congress has accepted the partition of India? So what we saw is cabinet mission came, it failed. Now League said no. So this man you see is the man who coined this word Pakistan. I want you to tell me what is his name. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was not the person who coined that word Pakistan. He is the key person. So I was talking about cabinet mission, it failed. Now Muslim League, it came strongly. It said now we need Pakistan, and it announced that on 16th August 1946 we should observe a direct action day. And because of this 16 August 1946 direct action day, riots broke out in Calcutta. Calcutta has a good majority of Muslims, around 35% they are. Not Calcutta, Bengal I'm talking about. So in 1947, this violence spread to northern part of India also. And when it spread, thousands were killed. Women faced brutalities during this partition. Millions, they were forced to flee their homes. And finally, they were reduced just as a refugee in an alien land, because Indian went to Pakistan, Pakistan went to Indian. So you see here, they are in search of shelter and food. These all people. And new country came into existence, Pakistan. It was West Pakistan and East Pakistan. And independence came with pain and violence of partition. So we cannot, say enjoy the freedom because this partition happened. Let me show you this picture. The green part you see is West Pakistan and East Pakistan. So Pakistan was not Pakistan today. It was two Pakistans, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Because all these have Muslim majority. Most of the majority is Muslims. So, and if you see, Hindus and Muslims live together everywhere. If you go to America, Indian Muslims, Canada, anywhere, Indian and Pakistanis, they live together. But here, because of the political provocation, people actually developed that hatred, which shouldn't be. Now we young people, we shouldn't have all these, because this what happened. But basically, India and Pakistan were together. So people from Pakistan, which were Hindus, came to India. From India, Muslims went to Pakistan. So Kashmir, Kalat and Hyderabad, they were princely state, and they were not acceding to either country upon independence. That is, we will not be going with either Pakistan or India. So finally, Hyderabad was annexed by India, Kalat was annexed by Pakistan, and Junagadh was also there. So finally, this star point you see, here the war broke out, or you can say riot broke out. So these were intercommunal conflicts between Pakistani or Indians, or you can say Hindu and Muslims. So this East Pakistan, after 1971, it was called as Bangladesh. There was a war, and finally Bangladesh and Bengal are same. So if you see, all the food, all the face, all the culture is same. Similarly, if you go to the border area, the Indians and Pakistanis, they talk together, they talk in the same way, they dress in the same way. So no difference. They are just our friends. Okay. Nationalism in Africa. So not only in India, we have to see what all were going on at that time. So let me talk to you about Ghana. This is Kwame Nkrumah. This is Ghana. I am showing you the map of Africa, and this is it comes in a part which I'll just talk about. So late 19th and early 20th century, Afro-Asian countries, that is African countries and Asian countries, various countries, they also witnessed this steep rise of nationalism in these countries. Why? And this was basically against colonial rule. Because colonial rule, see, everywhere we had French, Spanish, Dutch, English. So all these places, or right now they are countries, they were under certain rule. For example, Algeria. You see all the French, you will see Algerians only. The football team is half Algerian only. So colonial rule was somewhat different in Africa. It was dictatorial. Only chiefs allowed to rule on behalf of the foreign powers, which are the alien powers. So the foreign powers are ruling only on the basis of the chief, and the laws which are made for these people were created by only all white legislatures. All whites are making laws for the blacks. So basically what happened, first of all, these poor people, the forcible takeover of the land, it prompted them, and then the increased taxation on them. They were already poor and taxation was increased, and the people who were working, these blacks of the African, they had a very poor condition of working. So all these cumulatively led to African protest. So here the African protest started. So in 1957, if I talk to you about Ghana, this was called as Gold Coast. Previously, Ghana was called as Gold Coast. This was the first suburban African country to gain independence. So the freedom it got, it was the first of them, one of the first among this. So Kwame Nkrumah, he was the leader of this freedom movement. He was the leader of Convention People's Party, CPP. And he was responsible for all the strikes, boycotts, mass rallies. So under his leadership, all these happened. Strike, boycotts and mass rallies. In 1951, this party CPP won a huge electoral victory. It won everywhere. So now they were opposing the system of British that is allowing the chiefs to nominate representative to the legislature. Why are you nominating? They must be elected. So they pressurized the British that this nomination should not happen. Let them be elected. So now when they pressed British, they actually won this demand in 1954 that elections will be held. So now the elections to new legislative council, this was held in 1956. 1954, this demand accepted by Britishers. So 1956, there was again a new election. There will be no nominated members now. So now again CPP won, and finally an independent nation came into being, which was called as Ghana. Okay, this is all about this discussion. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.